If it's your kid asking, it's annoying. If it's a billion people across the globe, it's a challenge and responsibility. Farmers feeding the world. It's about agriculture coming together to increase both hunger solutions and food production. Please learn more and give generously.
Senator Tim Kaine from Virginia, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, glad to talk to you guys.
So can you start by telling us a little bit about your public service background in Virginia, as well as why you decided to run for Senate?
Absolutely. Well, I practiced law in Richmond for a long time, about 17 years, after growing up in Kansas in a family that both on my mom and dad's side were farmers. After I practiced law for about 10 years, I got mad at my city council one day and ran my first race in 1994 to be a city council person. And since then, now almost 20 years, I've been on the city council and mayor in Richmond, was lieutenant governor and then governor of Virginia, was chairman of the Democratic National Committee and the Southern Governors Association. And then in the February of 2011, when Jim Webb decided that he wasn't going to run for a second term in the U.S. Senate from Virginia, I jumped into the race, and 19 months later, got elected. It was a long haul, but there's some issues at the national level I feel very, very strongly about, and I love my Commonwealth, and it's a very dynamic place, and it's an honor to represent it here in the Senate.
So you have some background in agriculture, and Virginia, state you represent now, is pretty rich in agriculture.
Agriculture is our biggest industry in Virginia. Ag and forestry combined is the biggest industry sector. Even though we've had a booming, technology sector and a manufacturing sector, ag and forestry is still number one in Virginia.
And what are some of the main issues you hear from those constituents in the ag industry?
A lot. When I was governor especially, and then carrying over into being Senate, probably the biggest issue is how to help farmers who don't have massive acreage as kind of the traditional family farm, how to find strategies so that they can be economically productive and that they can keep farming and pass on their farms to their kids and their grandkids. There's a lot of pressures, whether they're tax pressures or the pressures of suburban development or just the difficulty in making a living on small acreages that make it difficult for farmers to keep these long-standing family farms in operation. So most of the issues I heard kind of fit into that. How can you make family farms productive and sustainable over the long term? Issues dealing with regulations, especially in Virginia, water regulations because of Chesapeake Bay Compact. Those were pretty common. Open space preservation strategies. One of the ways we tried to deal with the first issue in Virginia was having really dramatic tax credits for folks who agree to preserve working farms and forests. And we have a really significant tax credit to enable people to do that. And that was used very successfully by a lot of our farmers. And those are some strategies that I want to look to enhance at the federal level.
Okay. And
and then exports too. That's the other thing. Yeah, I'll say is that because we have a really great port in Virginia, in Hampton Roads, there's an awful lot of opportunities for our farmers to find customers overseas. And farms that were selling nothing overseas 10 years ago often now have pretty significant overseas customer bases. And that's something that, again, not just in Virginia, that nationally, we ought to do all we can to make sure that our farmers find new markets for the great products that they grow and raise.
And on trade, one of the large negotiations going on right now is a Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that and the whole process? Is it mostly a beneficial deal, or do you have to wait and see?
There will be pluses and minuses and details that we need to watch. But generally, I think more robust trade engagement is very important for our nation to do. So in the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and then the one that's following, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership with countries like the United States that ring the Atlantic, I think it's going to create really good opportunities for farmers and foresters too, to find new markets for products. So again, you got to pay attention to details, and there's always controversies because these are big, multi-step agreements with numerous partners, and you got to be careful and pay attention to the details. But if we are able to find a working agreement, I think it's going to open up new markets for a lot of our farmers that will be very, very good for them.
Mm-hmm. And as we sit here today, we still don't have a farm bill, a new comprehensive farm bill. That's a top priority, I know, for you. But what are some of the top 2 or 3 issues within the farm bill that you really want to see and really want to fight for when the time comes?
Well, as you know, I've just been here for a year, but this issue of no farm bill has now been kicking along for a couple of years. So I don't know all the reasons for why it was tough before I got here, but I'll tell you what I observe. I mean, I think the farm bill that the Senate put together does a very good job of transitioning away from direct subsidies for crops to subsidies for crop insurance, and I think that's the model that we should go toward. If the federal government is able to help provide subsidies so that farmers can buy crop insurance to insure against, weather and all kinds of other challenges, and we provide a subsidy on that insurance to make the premiums affordable, I think that's a much preferable way to deal with, trying to provide a backstop for agriculture than the direct subsidies. It also is good in helping us deal with the deficit. It saves us some significant amount of money. But it seems to me that what's really hung up the farm bill this year, what is hanging it up, and in the past, is the Senate is very, very strongly supportive of the SNAP program, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance. I'm very strongly supportive of that program. And while anything in that program can be improved, and there are some I would say problems with the way it's developed, and we've in the Senate bill tried to fix those problems and save some money. The idea that we need to dramatically slash that program at a time when we still have too many people who are hungry or not secure in where their next meal is coming from, I'm really against. And so that's been the holdup between the Senate and the House version, is the House's desire to cut a lot more out of SNAP. We do not want to do that in the Senate. Now, my hope is, just as we've, as we're talking today, we just voted and passed the Senate, the nation's first budget in 4 years. Last night, we're going to pass a big defense bill today with some bipartisanship. I'm hoping it's going to rub off a little bit, and frankly, from talking to the Senate Chairwoman, Debbie Stabenow, in the last day or two, she's starting to feel a little more positive. Probably won't get there by year end, but she's feeling positive about the direction of the discussion. So I think it would send an awful good signal if Congress could come together to embrace a policy that's necessary for American farmers.
Right. So do you think the budget passed by the Senate is sort of indicating a sea change, or?
I would say I hope so. So I don't know that I'm going to claim that yet, because I think, but it certainly is an indication that we need to work together and compromise. I'm on the budget committee. When I was elected, I was put on the committee, and I'm like, why do I want to do this? They haven't done a budget in 4 years. But I agitated with others, let's do some budgets again. I've done a lot of budgets as a mayor and governor, and the fact that we were able to get there, and that the Senate there's some things in this compromise we don't love. There's some things we wanted in that are not in, and the House says exactly the same thing. But that's what it takes up here. And the fact that we compromised, and in Virginia, I'm really proud of the fact that there's 13 members of Congress from Virginia, 11 House members and 2 senators, and it was 13-0 vote. We were all on board with this budget compromise. 8 Republicans, 5 Democrats were all on board. So I think it's suggesting that we're coming together. We will have a pretty critical discussion about the debt ceiling in late February, March, and that will be a test of, how cooperative do we want to be. But if we can do the budget, if we can do this defense authorizing bill, which we will, if early in 14 we find a breakthrough on the farm bill, which is tied up the Congress for the last couple of years, and we get this debt ceiling thing resolved, I think then you'll have enough in achievements in a row that I'll tell you, hey, it may be a sea change. We're not there yet. We got more work to do.
Do you think the same goes for immigration legislation in the upcoming year, particularly for farm labor?
Yeah, it's huge issue in Virginia. And, immigration reform is kind of an interesting one, because the coalition that supports it is a pretty diverse coalition. Ag, technology, the Chamber of Commerce, research universities, organizations that represent new Americans, primarily Latinos, but not only Latinos, churches. So it's a big bipartisan and multi-party coalition of folks that want immigration reform, but Ag is very, very focused on it. My sense is this: the Senate, we passed our bill with nearly 70 votes in June, and we've been kind of waiting on the House, and it looks like what the House is doing is, out of the Judiciary Committee, they're forwarding some kind of piecemeal approaches that they'll probably try to package into a larger bill. And I think the House will do an immigration reform bill. Now, it'll be different than the Senate's bill, and then that'll test us just like this budget compromise tested us. But if I had to predict, I don't think the House will leave immigration undone in 2014. I think they'll pass something meaningful, and then it will be up to the two sides to work together in conference and try to find that compromise that we can all embrace and move forward with.
Okay. Finally, just a personal question about your goals and expectations for the next year.
Good question. You know, I got asked the day I was sworn in, what's most immediate for your first year? And I said, I want to get a budget, and I want to replace as much of the sequester as possible. And it feels good here at the end of the year to be able to say on those two things we made significant progress. So for 2014, we have to get over the debt ceiling issue early in the year. It's not only important for the economy and for jobs and to produce economic activity, but it will also show the American public, is this a Congress that wants to work together or not? We gave them some bad evidence early in the year with the shutdown. Then we gave them some good evidence at the end of the year with the budget deal. We got to show them with this debt ceiling discussion that we want to work together. So that's really important. I am working on a couple of other key priorities. My committees are budget, armed services, and foreign relations. And on the Armed Services Committee, what I'm really working on most is helping all of the military men and women who are serving as they're transitioning back to civilian life. I want to help them get jobs as fast as they can. The unemployment rate is higher than the national average right now among veterans. And so, and we're going to have more people transitioning out of military service, over the next couple of years as we draw down in Afghanistan, and as the general projections about military troop strength are coming down. So we have to really, as a nation, and this is bipartisan, embrace a strategy of helping folks who served honorably find meaningful work as quick as they can. And that is, I got a bill passed this year to chip away at that, and I've got more ideas, and it will be good for our people and good for our economy.
Right. A lot of our veterans come from rural areas.
They sure do. I mean, we see it in Virginia. 1 in 9 Virginians is a veteran. So of our 8.5 million, and this is not just 1 in 9 adults, but from birth to death, our 8.5 million, 1 in 9 is a veteran, and heavily from rural areas. I go visit, the National Guard armories in Stanton or Southside Virginia near Emporia, and talk to families from rural Virginia whose spouses or children are in service. I was in Bahrain seeing the 5th Fleet, the Navy's 5th Fleet, a couple weekends back, and meet all these Virginians, many of them from rural Virginia. We love the military in Virginia. We want to make sure we provide the support we need for active duty, for vets, for military families, and that's something that I take seriously every day.
Senator Kaine, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, glad to be with you. Thanks.